True. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is TANTV Talks. TANTV Talks is a hub where we dive into conversations that matter. And today we are exploring a topic that's beyond timely, but also very crucial for economic and cultural vitality of our communities. I am Adedayo, and joining us today is Rhonesha from the Black-owned Media Equity and Sustainability Institute, also known as BOMESI. BOMESI has been at the forefront of empowering BIPOC communities through strategic partnerships with Black-owned media, fostering a landscape where diversity and equity are not just buzzwords, but the foundation of sustainable growth and representation. And so just to give you a bit of background context, right? We've been talking in recent years, there's been conversation about diversity and inclusion, which has gained, unprecedented momentum, even though now it's been challenged in many ways that we can't even imagine, right? But despite the progress that we've had, Black-owned businesses, especially in the media sector, continue to face systemic barriers that limit our growth and impact. And this is really where BOMESI steps in, championing the cause of Black media owners and ensuring that our voices are not just heard, but amplified. Amid a global pandemic and racial reckoning in the US, which going back to 2020, the summer of 2020, two wonderful, amazing, beautiful Black founders, Black-owned media founders created the nonprofit BOMESI to support Black-owned media businesses and educate the public on our importance. BOMESI was co-founded by Devon and Rhonesha with a mission to support and provide resources to and invest in Black-owned media outlets. And these outlets, like TANTV, right? We've been historically been pillars of the Black communities, offering not just news and information, but a sense of identity and belonging. And the work of BOMESI it's more than advocacy. It's really about creating sustainable ecosystem where Black-owned media can thrive, driving economic empowerment and social change. So with all that said, I'm excited to have Rhonesha, join us today and, dive into relevant conversation. But first off, how are you doing, Rhonesha?
I mean, I don't have anything left to share. You shared it all. I feel like the origin story, why it's important, what's going on with the money now, today,
Yes,
4 years from 2020. So bravo to you as the amazing host of this show.
thank you.
Research, setting me up right. I'm having a great day so far. It is finally getting warm in New York. That's where I'm based. And
Yeah.
I am super, super busy getting everything ready for Black-owned Media Weekend. And
Mm,
as you mentioned, I'm also a publisher myself. I run
yeah.
a company that is 16 years old this year, heragenda.com, which is a digital media platform bridging the gap between ambition and achievement for millennial women. And so I also have responsibilities there. So all of that is kind of like colliding today, but I'm getting through it one task at a time. And luckily, I have such a great team to support BOMESI and also her agenda as well. With BOMESI in particular, I literally would not have started the company if I didn't have a co-founder to go
Mm,
into it, because with her agenda, I am a solo founder, which is great in certain instances, but it's great also to have a partnership with someone that can also carry the load, take the lead, make decisions. And yeah, that's how my day is going so far.
no,
Excited
I
to
love it. I know you're in the weeds of preparing for Black-owned Media Weekend. Um, I actually put this to be the end, right, to talk about Black on Media Weekend, but somehow I'm prompted to let's just give us an idea of what Black on Media Weekend is, and why is this weekend special for Black and diverse Black on publications.
Yeah, I think first what we should maybe break down is how we define media. So for us, media is a digital publication. So you own a website and you publish stories that are original, reported by you or your contributor community. We also consider print publications a part of media. So if you have a magazine or a newspaper, we also consider podcasts, or if you might have a radio station, that is considered media. And also if you have a broadcast channel or a CCTV channel or a fast channel, then that also falls under the umbrella of media. And what makes Black Owned Media Weekend so special is that there's never been a conference created for diverse media owners. There's all these other conferences where we're a segment in the program talking about diversity, diverse suppliers, or it's a program that's made for marketers and advertisers, and we're also invited. Or it's a conference for content creators or influencers, and we kind of like tag along to that. But, and then of course, if you have a background in journalism, which a lot of people do who now have media companies are former journalists, we have the National Association of Black Journalists, which is a great organization, but that's for a journalist. But there was never any platform or any organization that actually represented diverse media owners. That's a whole different arena, different ballgame. So we're bringing that community together, speaking directly to them, and we're bringing the advertisers to us. And so, as much as we have to go to them, they should also absolutely understand that this is a marquee event for them and that it's a must if they want to remain relevant and remain authentic to their clients and make sure that they have diverse suppliers on their media plans. So
okay, I'm gonna pause you there so we don't.
one more thing to add, it just
Okay.
taps into also just us being together a community. And because community is really the anchor and the center for everything that we do. We started out by listing Black-owned media platforms that exist across the country on our website. And we have a community on WhatsApp where we talk every day. And that's never happened before. Legacy media companies and new media companies actually being transparent with each other and talking, sharing strategy, insights, and helping each other.
You're right. You're so right about that. And there's so many things I want us to touch on, but I'm trying to be very intentional about because of time. And also I want to get as much juice from you as I possibly can on this call. And so if you're watching, if you're a publisher, if you're an advertiser, and if you have a business, if you're a brand owner, and if you're just a general consumer of media, right, this conversation is for you. So just setting the tone there of who I want to, what I have in mind for this conversation, right? Let's touch about, while I have so many great questions about the role of BOMESI, because you definitely saw a gap in the market and you created BOMESI to fill that gap, right? But I want you to sort of talk about the challenges that you see Black or diverse-owned media facing, and then how is BOMESI fulfilling that gap or filling that gap?
I mean, how long do we have? Because much, but I will say we saw the need and the gap because we are publishers ourselves. And so you probably also relate to many of these things too. But a lot of the issues that I really see is the lack of visibility and the lack of relationships to revenue and capital. And primarily media makes money, as you know, through advertising. And so that lack of visibility to the advertising industry, lack of relationships within advertising, then leads to little to no revenue because you're not included in deal flow. And you need to have that visibility in those relationships to be included in deal flow. So that's one.
Yeah.
The other is often scale or reach or having enough traffic to justify deals that will actually make your business sustainable. And so if you have a website and you only have 10,000 page views, but then you go to an advertiser and you're trying to get $1 million, that doesn't connect. But then how can you grow that 10,000 into 100,000 if
Mhm.
you're not getting the deals? And so it's sort of like a chicken egg scenario where somebody has to put a pause on how we actually have historically done business, recognize that there is a deficit, and that's due to a lot of factors like systemic racism and just so many things, but it always goes back to racism.
Yeah.
Not that that's funny, but you have to laugh to keep from crying. But there needs to be
That's important.
investment in growth and giving media owners growth capital to invest in their marketing so that they can become a platform that scales. Because one thing Black-owned media does well is we produce, we tell the stories. We are, you know, we have a perspective. We have the content part down. It's the business side that we don't have down, and that creates a ripple effect across the board, from traffic to access to advertisers to all of the things.
No, well said, right? I mean, like, from what you said, many independently owned publishers lack the infrastructure to work with large brands at scale. And then also one of the things that I read from your platform, from the BOMESI side, and which is so true, is that mainstream media perceives us more as charity than being a competitive business, right? And so when you think about that and you think about the amount of advertising dollars out there, and the fact that we're somehow not getting those dollars, what do you think, or how do you think that these advertising dollars can be directed to Black-owned media, especially in this era where DEI is being challenged?
So when we first started BOMESI, we actually did a listening tour to all of the major CMOs for brands like GM, Hewlett Packard, P&G, Ben and Jerry's. And we wanted to understand, what are the challenges? We know the challenges for the media owners. Yes, like everything you said, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of the bandwidth, the capacity to sometimes be able to even connect your pipes, so to speak,
Yeah.
which is what they call the advertising ecosystem, the pipes to the national ecosystem, all of those things. So we were like, we can solve for that. We provide training, we provide partners, strategic partners, to allow these small independent companies to be competitive and to actually participate in deal flow. So check.
Mhm.
So then we go to the CMOs. We're like, what are the challenges and barriers for you when it comes to allocating budget to diverse owned media, and not the same players that you always spend with? That's great, include them too, but also let's grow and expand the pie. And a lot of it came down to the lack of scale, which is what I was talking about before. And
Yeah.
so with BOMESI, we came up with a solution that we call the BOMESI Collective. And so with that, when we do a deal, we all go after a deal together. And that taps back into the tradition of collective economics, which has been part of our history as a people from the beginning of time. It's just, how can we lift each other? A rising tide lifts all boats. And so when we do a deal with BOMESI, we're not an agency, we're a nonprofit. So we're thinking about, how can we actually make the deal equitable? So on the front end, what we do is, as just a regular deal, is the brand that signs a deal with BOMESI.
Mhm.
And then on the back end, what we do is we put together a group of sites, maybe 20 sites, so that all together will deliver the impressions that are needed for the brand to feel confident to continue to spend with us. And then, with payment and advertising, it's all about CPMs. And, CPMs are often not very lucrative. And so what we do with BOMESI is we created something called the BOMESI scale. And so it's sort of like back in school when we would have a weighted grade, and certain people in the class, their grade would be lifted because someone else, overperformed. And so that's the notion behind the BOMESI scale, is that we don't pay them based off CPM, we pay them based off this scale, with the idea that we're reinvesting in ourselves and allowing the site that has the 10,000 page views to then get extra capital to reinvest in their growth, so they can then eventually become the site with 100,000 page views. So yeah, that was interesting. We heard the challenge, and then we created an opportunity out of that. And so I would say, for anybody who's hesitant to, expand your partners, just really come to BOMESI, because we work with everybody. We vet and verify platforms. And we have all of the infrastructure and tools to make everybody successful and hit all the KPIs needed.
You already touched on equity, so that was going to be my next question, to really explain what equity means within this landscape, and how we actively address the imbalance, which you are already touching on when you look at the business and your revenue and advertising, and how Black-owned media is usually overlooked in this arena, right? For instance, one of your advertisers, is it Danone, committed 5% to ensure that 5% goes towards Black-owned media or diverse-owned media, right? So can you paint a picture for an advertiser, using this as a case study, right? The Danone case study, to say, okay, why, if they're working with the ad exchanges already, why do they need to commit 5% to say, okay, this dollar, this advertising box is going to should go towards diverse or Black-owned media? Why is that necessary?
Well, you have to strengthen and grow the ecosystem, because the world is becoming more and more multicultural. So if you don't have authentic platforms that actually are able to tell that story and that perspective in an authentic way, everybody will be in a deficit. And so I think recognizing that, also recognizing the deficit for after years of not investing with diverse owned, they recognize the need to make that commitment, because it's needed in order to make up for that deficit. And I say a lot too, with diverse owned and Black owned media, advertisers need to understand that it's not going to be a change overnight, and that there needs to be long-term commitments. And so that's what's really great about our relationship with Danone, is that it's part of a multi-year commitment, where they understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and recognize all of the challenges that I outlined about the lack of scale and the lack of visibility and all of that. They recognize that, and so they their investment actually helps to fuel a bigger partnership that BOMESI has with a company called Cargo, that we've created in order for us to not only have ads on the page, or that's just one part of it, but also reinvest in editorial. So we actually are funding a core group of platforms to be incubated and to grow by underwriting some of their content production. So the more articles that you publish a day, that's more page views that comes to your site. More page views that come to your site, the more advertising dollars you receive. So that's the notion behind it, and they recognize and understood that, and we talked to them for, I think, close to a year before we were able to bring them in and connect on this opportunity. So that's a part of what BOMESI does too. We don't just work with anybody. There's a long conversation that happens ahead, because we're educating a lot of people in this industry who don't understand, what it means to be Black owned, what it means to be independent. So you don't have venture capital dollars behind you, or a big corporation or conglomerate behind you. and also the difference between Black owned and Black targeted. Like a lot of people don't understand that. And then also, just because you're Black owned does not mean that you're Black targeted. Like there's layers and nuances to this on multiple sides and multiple levels. So a lot of what we do is educate in addition to advocate.
Yeah, so back to talking about the investment, right? Investment for the advertisers to sort of see this as an investment in Black-owned media. What is a scenario of a meaningful return on the investment for their businesses or their brands?
I mean, a lot of it is really that, and you know this too, as a founder and publisher yourself, these platforms, our platforms, we have really, really deep connections to our audiences. So while it might not be 10 million people, it's going to be a focused and dedicated, trusted group of people that actually go to our platforms because they connect to us and our story. And so with that trust and that authenticity, that extends to the brands. And so often when you do a deal with a diverse platform, when you look at the numbers, the engagement is higher. You're going to have higher click-through rates. You're going to have a longer viewing time, longer time on site. Really because of the trust that we've built with our community. You know, before advertisers even came into the conversation for us, most of us make money through selling to our community directly. We produce events where we sell tickets, and those ticket sales help keep us afloat. We might produce merch or t-shirts or candles. Like I have a candle even right here with the Her Agenda logo on it. Like
Yeah.
that's how we sustain ourselves. And it's really about, you know, I think with diverse owned media, we don't look at our audience as an audience. It is a community, truly. And so that community shows up for us. And in showing up for us, the brand is going to look good because they're going to support that brand and seek that out. And it's not even just anecdotal because, you know, obviously I've lived this, but also talking to other media owners. And there's a study that Nielsen put out recently that also proves this. So there's numbers behind it that show customers are being more aware of who is supporting Black owned. And so when they see your ad on a Black owned site, they're like, yes, this brand, this advertiser supports my community. And they'll remember that when they walk into the store.
So there's definitely a sense of more engaged community beyond just looking at the users of the platforms, of the Black-owned media platforms, as just like your audience or numbers, right? Like we might not be that many in numbers, but we are quality targets, right? We're quality consumers, and we understand the value of what you're putting into our community and how we respond and we work together. So, and I think it's very powerful when you think about it, because you're not just dealing with it's more targeted, and I like the fact that our platforms, but it's a community. It's a community, you know, so you're not just selling to just check off the box or whatever, you know, you're selling to people who understand the ripple effects of doing business within the community. So and that's powerful. When you think about Black-owned publications like ours, right? What are some of the tools? And this is something I myself, as a publisher, who happen to also be a recipient and a alumni of BOMESI, right? Which is great. We got to learn a lot on dealing with programmatic ads and the ad exchange platforms like Cargo and all that. But what are some of the tools of directing ad dollars to our media platforms? Like how should we continue to think about the possibilities of direct deals, if of how to go about direct deals, or how to source for RFPs, or how to continue to work with BOMESI as a under the collective of the programmatics?
Yeah, direct deals are always the way to go when it comes to how to spend your energy and time. I think with programmatic, for me at least, this is just me speaking, my perspective is just find the right partners and let that, set up good terms. and, let them deal with the programmatic. And, as an independent platform with, not a lot of capacity, you have to focus on the direct deals. That's where the bread and butter comes in. And the way to source, honestly, it's a bit of an art and a science to it. You have to make sure that you are visible in the marketplace. And so that means, putting out thought leadership as much as possible. So showing up in Ad Week, Ad Age, maybe submitting editorials, things like that. Going to conferences is a huge thing. So there's a program, or not a program, an organization called the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers. They've been a huge resource for diverse owned media, actually, and making sure that the relationship between advertisers and media companies continue to unfold and grow. They have something called, what do they call it? It's diverse supplier sessions where we
Mm.
get to kind of sort of like when we did the upfront,
Yeah.
minutes in front of a group of people to explain yourself and your capabilities. So that's another thing. And just making sure you stay ready, have your media kit always up to date, understand your numbers. So like if somebody says, what's your max avails for the month? You have to be able to answer that and understand what your budget levels are, all of it. And so just continue to educate yourself. There's a lot of webinars and things. BOMESI puts out webinars as well. And then, yeah, just come to the conferences, invest in yourself, and get yourself there, get on stages if you can, in order for people to know who you are and what platform you represent. And then the RFPs will kind of just come sporadically.
So,
Sporadic. They slowed down a lot though. So if you are a media company and you're like, where are the deals? It's not just you. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I remember 2020, after the awakening that the industry had due to the racial reckoning in America, it was like raining RFPs. Like every day I was getting an email from an agency asking me things in this language that I never spoke before. I'm like, RFP, CPM, what
mm,
is what is this? And then
yeah.
they're throwing budgets at me. They're like, we have 75K to spend. Can we do a flight of 6 weeks? I'm like, flight? What are you talking about? 6 weeks? 75K? What?
It's
um,
almost like money we've never seen in this space.
Yeah, and so then once I educated myself, I really felt like I was in like grad school or something. I watched every webinar possible on programmatic, direct, sales. I called people up who coached me through, putting together a media plan, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It was a good 2 years. And then last year, I recently heard Detavio speak about this from Revolt. Um,
Mm,
he said, he thought that we had a longer runway
mm,
before all of the goodwill would shut off. And the runway got shortened, when those lawsuits started to come out last year,
yeah.
diversity and equity and the grants going to Black owned and things like that. That was the start of it. And then now this year, it's like completely like
Void.
all
Yeah.
gone. So yeah, right at this point, it's really about tapping back into our kind of like our roots of
Mhm.
how did we actually sustain ourselves before advertisers even came into the mix. And so getting smart about getting deeper and more connected to our audience, our community, and thinking about ways to diversify our revenue beyond advertising.
Yeah.
Did I
Um,
answer the question? I feel like I went on a
no,
journey.
no, you did, because you pointed out on, the reckoning that America had, and the big companies dedicating, dollars and commitments to supporting Black-owned businesses, and then now 4 years later, look at where we are. It's been challenged a whole lot, and everything is like going down the hill, right? But when you think, so being under the collective, the BOMESI collective, for instance, if we were to, for instance, get direct deal with a partner, but we don't have the inventory to fulfill the deal, how do we present it to BOMESI in a way that makes sense? Like, hey, we're talking with this partner, but we cannot be the only one. Like, we know what our traffic is. We know that it's there are limitations, right? But we want to be able to share the pie so that everybody eats out of the pie rather than losing the whole pie, you know? So
And
how do you advise publishers?
yeah, we welcome that and we would love to do that. And so it's really a matter of once you get the fish on the hook and you're
Mhm.
talking to an advertiser, just bring us in. We have a team also. We just hired a sales support and operations person. So we're able to get into more of those meetings and different conversations to support your pitch.
Mhm.
Definitely down to do that, and we need to do that more. I think historically, we were trying to figure it out ourselves when we got
Yeah.
this running. And so Devon and I brought in a lot of the deals. And so now we're at this next phase where we have to help each other even more. And so if there is an opportunity, whether whoever's in the collective, they can bring it to us and we can work out the terms and figure out how many sites can go into the deal based off the budget, based off the
Mhm.
impression we need to deliver, and we can execute it together. Absolutely.
So do you hear that, publishers? You don't have to go at it alone. But I because I thought to ask that because everyone is trying to find that money, trying to find that revenue. But the fact is we shouldn't feel alone with being a part of the collective. Like we shouldn't feel like we're by ourselves, right? So even as you're going for the deal and you're trying to make sense and make sensible business, there should be a way to present it like, hey, we are a collection, or we are a collective, and we can fulfill these numbers, right? And you should advertise with us. How do you correlate local businesses, right? Going back to your point of before we were working with these main organizations, we're going into our communities, we were seeking, add dollars from local businesses. So now on the scale, how do we continue to work with local businesses to ensure that we're making impact for their brands and also making that dollar? How do you suggest to work in working with?
I think so. Actually, much credit to Munson, who is the founder and publisher of Rolling Out, which has been around for 20 something years. I don't know the exact number, but he emphasized to me in a chat recently that we need to be better about going after not just Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 brands,
Mm-hmm.
advertisers, but exactly what you just said, the electric company in your neighborhood. Who is
Yeah.
that? They have a marketing budget.
Mm-hmm.
And state government agencies, they have marketing budget. Nonprofit organizations and government entities, they have marketing budget. And so just getting ourselves out of that, just like we need to have the brand that is, the same brand that's gonna have a Super Bowl commercial
Mm-hmm.
advertised on our platform. But there's other sort of like less sexy type of companies that do have the budget, but they don't have the knowledge of how to source you or how to find you. And so
Yeah.
you it's a targeted strategy to reach out to them, have those meetings, especially for like the local electric company.
Mm.
Then I think that's a way to have a lot of success, a lot of repeat business and recurring revenue coming in as you work to close that 100K or 500K deal from the national advertiser.
Yes, yes. I'm going to read some key traction that I got from BOMESI. And I hope I'm on point with this. But BOMESI has graduated 14 emerging publishers from its 3-month accelerator program. You have awarded more than $400,000 in non-dilutive grants, and you launched a third publisher accelerator cohort. And BOMESI is the leading ecosystem creating revenue opportunities for Black and diverse owned media. And BOMESI aims to provide greater economic mobility, a pathway for the multicultural community and to improve long-term outcomes for the media industry.
Ooh,
So, so
yes.
when I saw these numbers, I was blown, right? Because yeah, these are numbers, these are figures, these are things that this is work that you've put into this. So first of all, I just want to applaud you for the work being done, but shine a light on just how were you able to sort of think of it in terms of bringing this bringing publishers together and achieving these milestones. They're very significant because just being a recipient, and being one of the publishers within the collective, I know how meaningful this, the accelerator program was for us. Just like when you were reading and studying in 2020 and all of the new deals come in, and then given 4 years later through BOMESI, I'm learning and I'm like blown away, like, wait a minute, what
Yeah.
I've been doing this whole time. It's like a new world out there. So tell me about these milestones and also what is the future for BOMESI?
Yeah, so we didn't really get too into actual like formalities of not the way that the organization runs and what we stand for. So I'll get into that a little bit and then go to the milestones that you pointed out. So BOMESI is built around what we call three pillars. One is ecosystem building. So that's starting with that community, our media owners, media leaders, and also creating an ecosystem around them. And so that's connecting them to strategic partners, advertisers, everything that needs to grow and thrive an ecosystem that's centering Black owned media. So then our other pillar is around education. So educating media owners and media leaders about how to become more competitive and how to tap into, different technology partners, and how to, be more visible in the advertising ecosystem. And then also we educate brands because they need education as well in terms of how to put together an equitable deal for diverse owned media and how to even source, reputable, diverse suppliers. And then
Yeah.
the pillar is, I think, the most important, and it points to a lot of those milestones that you mentioned, is economic empowerment. And that under that umbrella, we have the BOMESI Collective, and we also have the BOMESI Accelerator Program, which, as you pointed out, has been phenomenal. We're now in our third cohort. So at the end of this cohort, we'll have 21 publishers who have gone through the BOMESI Accelerator. So that means that we would have given out, once this cohort graduated, we are going to be responsible for providing over $500K in grants, $525,000 in grants to diverse owned media. And although BOMESI, we center and uplift Black owned media, through the accelerator, we've actually expanded to diverse owned media. So, from other communities as well, they're able to participate in this program. And that's really big kudos and big shout out to GM, who is our lead partner and the lead sponsor for this. And they're invested in making sure that there is success across these cohorts. And I'm really, really proud of that. And really with the accelerator, I built what I wish existed when I first started Her Agenda. I started it in 2008. So you got to think about what the internet and media landscape was. Everything was about tech and creating an app or software, but like there was nothing actually for media companies. And a lot of people thought what I was building was a blog. And I'm like, it's not a blog, it is a media platform.
Yeah.
And so, this was just like before BuzzFeed even existed, that I'm out in the streets trying to raise money from investors. I'm applying to Techstars and Y Combinator, which I rejected from because they didn't understand the business model. They thought that I was not focused because my customer is many people. It's B2B and B2C. And when you say that an investor, they're confused about their target market or their customer. And I'm like, I'm not confused. You are. So everything that we put into this accelerator, Davon is also a publisher himself. And so it was just what we wish that we had as an up and coming publisher. And I was lucky enough to get into an accelerator program, which was great, but it wasn't built for media. It was built for, creating companies that were investing in the growth of women and girls. So her
Mhm.
agenda, but they didn't really understand like how I was going to make money.
Yeah.
Or how to direct me towards making money. They just knew, okay, well, you need a financial forecast, so make up some numbers. Okay.
Wow, wow. You're truly, Rhonesha, you're truly a trailblazer in this, and being a female in this space, let's take a step back to her agenda as well, right? Because it's a platform that empowers women. I'm a subscriber, and I love getting the newsletters. But as a woman in this space, what has it been like for you, just navigating and trying to thrive within this space? Because you are thriving, but I know it hasn't always been this rosy. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, you know what? A part of being a founder and entrepreneur is in order for us to keep going, a lot of us
Mm.
block out the hard parts after we get through
Yeah.
it. I take the lesson with me, but I don't really hold on to the actual moment.
Mm.
For me, actually being a woman owned business and a woman founder has been actually a benefit to me for a number of reasons, but I was able to, participate in a lot of like just discussions and help move the needle forward on behalf
Mhm.
of, women who are in corporate spaces, for instance, that have less control over things like their paycheck and, equal pay and things like that. So I more so was an advocate and a voice understanding, the nuances of what's going on in a day to day for women.
Mhm.
But also, I know you said you wanted to dial it back to talk about her agenda. I will say, I was blind to a lot of things because I was a solo founder. So when I go into a meeting, they
Mhm.
know I'm the person to talk to because there's no other person to talk to.
Yeah.
Now with BOMESI having a male co-founder, or often sitting at a table where maybe a teammate who is a male is in the room, that
Mm.
often comes to negotiations or numbers or anything around the business, they often directed towards my male counterpart, which I'm like, whoa, or
Right here.
and I'll say something and people will not respond or react. And then literally someone else will say the same thing. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden it's like, wow, oh my gosh. And so I noticed that now, just having a male co-founder, like those subtle nuances, those
Mhm.
biases are still very much present. And so, I have to laugh it off, but also it fuels like why her agenda is still needed, because there's a lot of still biases and patriarchal ways of doing business that need to be broken down and eliminated. And I think the way to break them down and eliminate them is to talk about them. And so
Yeah.
that's why with her agenda, we're going back to doing our in-person events again, and we're tackling topics like imposter syndrome and things of that nature. So
Yeah, so we're coming to the end of this talk, and trying to think of a couple of things that I really wanted to touch on, but I haven't really yet touched on it. So I'm just gonna ask some. It's just we'll take it as a sort of rapid fire, quick questions. First of all, about the let's see, let me go down the list. 1 second. Um, Alrighty. Okay, so I want to talk about what the future holds for BOMESI in terms of, expanding support for Black-owned media. So let's touch on that real quick, and then I'll ask you like two more questions and we'll wrap up.
yeah, so if you think about the name Black owned media equity and well, let me say the name again because see. It's a lot.
It's a tongue twister.
Black-owned Media Equity and Sustainability Institute, and we purposely chose those words, equity, sustainability, but then institute is at the end, right? So what we foresee BOMESI growing into is to be a foundation that can distribute working capital dollars, really like six-figure grants. Like we do great. We give out $25,000 grants, which is huge for the platforms that we have in the accelerator, but we want to be able to give out six-figure grants, even $1 million grants in the future. So just to continue to grow and to be a real resource in the community, and providing access to capital and access to resources for us to go from not only just surviving, because a lot of us are in survival mode, but for us to thrive. Like, what if we had growth capital? What would happen if we had R&D and we could actually, spend money on experiments and creating new technology and doing different things in a different way, or even producing award-winning investigative pieces, which take a lot of resources and revenue to produce. What kind of just conversations could we unlock in the community that could then heal maybe generational wounds that we have? So yeah, that's the big goal, is to make sure we're continuing to provide capital, growing that, and then growing our community so we can have retreats, we can have, continue to have conferences, and then also, make sure that we have our advisory board and all of that launched and buttoned up too. We're excited for that phase.
That's all exciting. I'm jealous of the cohort that will be getting $1 million grant. I'm like, give me some of that now. When it was my time, we didn't get that. So
Yeah.
you're definitely gonna get there for sure. At this rate, you're gonna get there. In terms of partnership and for businesses that, advertisers, brands, why should they partner with Black-owned media? Why should they advertise in Black-owned media?
I think if you don't advertise in Black-owned media, you're missing a whole other segment in the marketplace that is actually going to spend with you, and you're leaving money on the table essentially if you're not spending with Black-owned. And then also it goes back to what we were talking about. When you invest in Black-owned, when you have your ad and your brand show up with Black-owned, we have a trust and a commitment from our audience and our community, and that drives engagement to your brand. So you're going to see more click-throughs, you're going to see more time on site, you're going to see more people spending more time watching the actual pre-roll. And that really translates to success across the board. Our audience understands your brand supports Black-owned, and then your brand has increased sales and new customers.
There was a quote on your site that I saw. It quoted one of your advisors for the accelerator, Michelle Guy, and it says, "It's unacceptable for advertisers to treat the Black community only as consumers. We are founders, we are creators and publishers, and expect to be treated with not only respect, but with action. And that means we expect investment and opportunity." And I think from what you just said, that's exactly right. We're not just consumers, we're also, we're the best. Yes, indeed, we're the best consumers you can have. But to have us as the best consumers, you also need to invest in us, right? And on the final note, what advice would you give to new Black-owned media startups looking to make a significant impact in their communities?
Oh, making an impact in your community. I think even by simply existing, that you're making an impact, because you have a perspective that, New York Times or CNN, they're not going to bring to the table. So that's one.
Do that again.
And then also making sure you're intentional about hiring writers from the community. That's something that I did from day one. Before I even paid myself, I made sure that I paid writers, because I could not advocate for women to be equally paid in the corporate office, and then I'm not paying women. That doesn't work. So make sure you pay your writers. Make sure you have a plan to afford to pay the writers.
Mm,
And I think what's important, at least for her agenda, what we have felt helps the community is just bringing them together in a way that's meaningful, that will like, move the needle forward in some way. So whatever your focus area is, think about how can you create in real life experiences that move forward the mission and the brand. But I find across the board, diverse owned media, whenever I talk to them,
mm.
and you see the names of their platforms, or what they do or why they do, it's always rooted in a mission. And so that's why it's hard for me to really provide a concrete answer to this, because by simply existing, we are contributing to our community because we're putting out mission focused content and a mission focused message that otherwise wouldn't have seen the light of day.
Oof, that's a word right there. Just by existing, you're making an impact, and to that end, I want to say thank you for joining us in this conversation. I feel like I've learned a thing or two. It's not like I didn't even know these things before, but just having you re-emphasize some of these things makes a world of difference. And I do hope that advertisers get to see the relevance of investing in us, not just using us as consumers, but also knowing that we're worthy of being invested in, and we will deliver. We will deliver on audience, we'll deliver on, now we have a collective, so we'll deliver on figures too, and numbers. We're not a charity case. We are not, just existing just to fill the gaps. We are meaningful platforms that here to serve. So thank you, Rhonesha, and well done on everything you've accomplished.
To
I
you too.
just love your work and I love you. So
Thank
well done on everything.
you.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right, bye.
Hey. All righty. Thank you. Bye. Did you stop? Are we good?